So how much does diet and gut health really impact on autoimmune conditions? Most of the immune system lives in the gut. There's a really strong association between gut dysbiosis, so an imbalanced gut microbiome, the bacterial balance within the gut, and autoimmune disease. So we know that by working with the gut, so in my clinic and in my field, we do a functional and integrative medicine. We do stool testing, comprehensive stool testing, quite different to what you would do with your GP or consultant quite often, because we're looking at functional factors. We're looking at digestive enzymes. We're looking at inflammation in the gut. We're looking at the immune system of the gut. We're looking at the bacterial balance, the good bacteria and the bad bacteria, and how they balance. So by addressing this, and we have to address this through diet, so taking out inflammatory foods and also maybe putting in some more gut healing foods to help to address the gut barrier lining, we can then help to improve gut function and that association with autoimmune disease. So I've seen many times people see significant improvements in autoimmune disease just by changing diet before they do any of the clever gut work through supplementation or antimicrobials, etc. And probiotics, just by changing diet, just by taking those inflammatory foods out. Sugar is a huge one. You know, the amount of times I've seen people take sugar out and their autoimmune disease improves. Gluten is a common one, very common. Often dairy as well. So there's quite a lot that we can do on diet, and those are just the basics, but we can go quite a lot further on the dietary front as well. So dysfunction in the intestinal barrier can throw off the gut's immune balance and increase inflammatory responses. So that's your connection with autoimmune disease. It affects immune tolerance. So what causes intestinal barrier dysfunction? This comes down to very often stress, so raised cortisol levels, toxins. There's lots of research around toxins and gut barrier dysfunction. Mold toxicity, also a lot of research. We see it a lot in clinic. Lack of sleep has a big impact, and the gut dysbiosis, so that imbalanced gut bacteria. So when we're talking about dietary changes, what are we referring to? So I've already mentioned about key things like sugar and gluten and dairy. And, you know, it doesn't mean for life, but we start, and if it helps, we can continue. Like I say, we can do certain functional tests to see whether that is indicated for you. I have to say, my heart always sinks a little bit when a devout vegetarian or vegan comes with an autoimmune disease to my clinic, and we need to try and do that gut work. It is really hard to do with a vegetarian and vegan diet. I've tried and have often seen vegetarians and vegans needing to convert to meat eating just to be able to heal their gut. And the reason for that is because vegetarian and vegan diets, they are more carb rich typically. You can't get complete proteins. Like animal protein is a complete protein, but it's really hard to get that through a vegetarian diet, and through trying to get the protein through the beans, pulses, legumes, etc., nuts, seeds, you are increasing some inflammatory components. The lectins, certain fibers as well, can be more inflammatory and aggravating for the gut. So that can be a tricky one. There are times where people have given up meat and they feel a lot better for it. And I always explain that actually this doesn't mean that your body doesn't need meat. It actually is most of the time an indication that you have a weak digestive system and you're struggling to break the meat down. And this can be because of a low stomach acid or low digestive enzymes in the system, or you're not chewing properly or not cooking it. You know, we've lost a lot of traditional methods of cooking, so most of us will, you know, grill and pan fry, and instead of the slow cooked more traditional ways of preparing food, because when we slow cook something, we're naturally breaking down those meat fibers. So meat is harder for the body to digest. And if we have a healthy body, we can do that. But actually, if we have a weak digestive system, we can struggle. So that's why for some people, they'll take the meat out, feel a lot better, because they weren't digesting it properly. But like I say, it doesn't mean they don't need the meat, because actually meat is so nutrient dense. It's one of the most nutrient dense foods. We can pack so many nutrients just into a small piece of food through that meat. And there's so much misinformation around red meat as well. Actually, if you look at the research and the what everyone has jumped on board with red meat and associations with cancer, particularly bowel cancer, etc. Actually, when you go back to the research, it is really negligible. It's pretty inconclusive. And I always say to people, go back to our evolutionary roots. Look at what we've evolved with. We evolved with what we could hunt, what we could kill, catch, what we could forage. So it doesn't really make sense that we would suddenly not be able to tolerate something we've evolved with. I'm not saying go crazy on it. People eat way too much of it often. So that's another problem with the Western diet. So in moderation, it can be really, really healthy and beneficial. So often it is more of a paleo diet actually that we're encouraging a lot of our patients to go on to, and that's where we can see the best results. And paleo is where it's meat, it's fish, it's eggs, it's nuts, it's seeds, coconut products, and lots of vegetables, some fruit. That's basically a paleo diet, and that's where we see. So we take the dairy out, we take the grains out, take the refined sugar out, any refined products, and that's where we see people respond the best very often.